Hello. Today I'm showing off a little cloud project I did. It's basically a VPN between an Azure virtual network and a AWS VPC. And I got it all automated, written out in Terraform code. So first I'm going to draw out a little infrastructure diagram. Then I'm going to show you some of the code, and then I'm going to run Terraform plan and apply and show you what it actually looks like and validate that the connection works between the two cloud platforms. So I have two sides. I have the Azure side on the left. I have the AWS side on the right. And I'm going to start with the Azure side. So I have a virtual network. So I'm going to draw a box for that. So this is a VNet. It's in the region East US, and its IP range is 10.0.0.0/24. And then within the VNet, I have two subnets. So one of them is a subnet I have just for my jump box. So this one is 10.0.0.0/25. And then I have another subnet for the VPN gateway because you need to specify a subnet. So this one is 10.0.0.1, sorry, I messed it up, .128/25. So just split up into two different 25s. And you have to call it, you specifically have to name it gateway subnet. Um, and so I deploy a VPN gateway to the subnet. VPN gateway. You got to give it a public IP. And you also have to specify two local network gateways for the two tunnels, which will point to the AWS side. So I'll just draw them out right now, right down here. Local network gateway 1 and local network gateway 2. And I also have a jump box in this subnet. It's Ubuntu VM, and I have Apache web server installed on it. Now I'm going to go over to the AWS side. Really, these local network gateways have to point to addresses on the AWS side, so I got to draw this side out too. So similarly, there's a VPC on the AWS side. Give me a sec. So this is my VPC in US East 1 region, and this is a 10.0.0 .1 10.0.1.0/24. So these are completely separate address spaces, two different /24s on both different cloud platforms. So I give it a subnet. And this is subnet. You got to specify the availability zone in AWS. So this is US East 1A, and this is 10. This is .0.1.0/24. So same address space as the VPC, taking up the whole address space. Now I have an internet gateway here. for traffic to and from the internet, and I also have a VPN gateway, which will be for traffic to and from Azure. And you got to make a VPN connection object, and that'll specify the two public IP addresses for the tunnel. So I'll try that out now. So VPN connection. And you have IP1 for tunnel 1, and then IP2 for tunnel 2. You also got to specify a customer gateway, which will point to the public IP address on the Azure side. So very similar to the local network gateways in the Azure side, but just for AWS. So customer gateway, and that points to the Azure public IP address. And the two local network gateways will point to the AWS IP addresses. You have two IP addresses, one for each tunnel. And then that'll set up the VPN connection. So you got the VPN gateway on the Azure side will point to the public IP address, and that'll link up. That'll make the tunnel between the public IP address and the two IP addresses on the AWS side, and that'll link up to the AWS VPN gateway to route to and from AWS. Yeah, I also similarly to the Azure side, I have a Ubuntu VM with Apache on it. Ubuntu instance with Apache. And and this is at 10.0.1.4. On the Azure side, it's 10.0.0.4. That's the IP address, local IP address. And then once you have all this set up, I set up the security groups on both sides to allow only HTTP and ICMP traffic between them. So this red line will kind of give you the protocols that I'm using to validate the connection. So it's going to be HTTP and ICMP. Now to actually get into the jump box to test out this connection, I need to SSH into them. So I specify a public IP address on the Azure side. And this is connected to the VM. And then on the AWS side, it's an elastic IP. And through the internet gateway that's connected to the EC2 instance. And that allows me from my computer, I'll represent this up here, to connect into these two VMs over SSH. So I'll SSH into each VM and then test out HTTP and ICMP. So just doing curl and ping commands to the IP address on the other side. So now that I got the diagram out, I'm actually going to run the Terraform command. So this is the code. I'll have the link in the description below. But there's the commands to deploy it. So you got the first four are going to be your credentials for Azure. So you got to specify your service principal ID and secret, your tenant ID, your subscription ID, and then the next two are specifying your credentials for AWS, your access key ID and your secret access key. Specify them in these environment variables. And then I also have this variable for a SSH public key file. So you specify where that is on your computer. It's usually going to be in the .ssh folder. Maybe like ID underscore ed something .pub. So oftentimes it'll be ID underscore RSA .pub. Depends on what encryption algorithm you're using. So just specify that. and then you can do your normal Terraform init plan and apply. And it takes about 11 minutes to run. So I I have the environment variables already set, so I'm just going to run the Terraform commands. Net Terraform plan. Okay, there we go. It generated a valid plan. 40 resources to create across both cloud platforms, and it's also going to output the IP addresses of the Ubuntu VM, so I can SSH into them once it's done. So I think that's fine. So I'm going to run Terraform apply. Would you like to create 40 resources? Say yes. And there we go, let it rip. So it's going to take about 11 minutes for this to run. While this is running, I'll go through some of the code and some of the resources that help me out. First off, this page from AWS documentation helped me out. It's about creating VPNs between AWS and Azure. I'll put a link to this in the description. Um, there's some options that list how to do like AWS Direct Connect and Azure Express Route. Maybe if you had like a um, production data center or production workloads, maybe this would be useful, but I'm just doing this for like a personal project, so I just use a site-to-site VPN. So yeah, it gives different options. If you're going to have multiple VPCs or VNets, you're on the AWS or Azure side, you're going to want to use either like AWS Transit Gateway or Azure vWAN to allow you to connect multiple VPCs or VNets together. Um, But in this example, I just did the simple like single VPC approach where it's just one VPC with a VPN gateway. So yeah, I'll put a link to that in the description, and here's also put a link to the code. So I'm going to go through some of the cool stuff in the Terraform code that allows this to happen. Um, so I have one variable which is the path to your SSH public key file. So it'll upload it to both Azure and AWS at the same time, so you can use it. The same SSH key to SSH into both VMs, pretty handy. Um, Oh, I generate the pre-shared keys for the two tunnels in Terraform. You know, you need two pre-shared keys in tunnel and for both tunnels. So I use this random string resource that'll just generate it for me. I say 64 characters, no special characters, no numeric. So one for tunnel one, one for tunnel two, and I reference the same exact this resource on both Azure and AWS code. Um, If I go to locals.tf, I have some hard-coded constant values. So I have like the region and address space for both cloud platforms. So both for Azure and AWS, they're both East US or US East. And Azure gets 10.0.0.0/24 and AWS gets 10.0.1.0/24. So you could change this and the code will still run. It might change some of the subnet sizes on the Azure size, but yeah, that's pretty neat. I have for the Ubuntu VMs, I specify their user data or custom data scripts in this file, server startup script.sh.tf template. So it's an sh, it's just just a shell script that installs Apache and starts it, and it also puts a default index.html page that just says hello from, and then right here I have the Terraform templating. So input in what cloud platform it's in. And so hello from cloud region, then I input in what region on the cloud platform. So on the Azure side, I input in like hello from Azure region East US. On the US side, I say hello from AWS region US East 1. And we'll see that this comes in handy when validating the HTTP connection to see that, oh, one side can actually reach the other. And then I have outputs.tf where I just output the two public IP addresses for the Jumpbox VMs. And then the bulk of the code is in these two files. So I have aws.tf and azure.tf. So I separate out all the resources for both cloud platforms in two different files. Now they're all in the same state file, which might not be a great idea for a production workload. Generally, you don't want, because if you have both your Azure and AWS resources in the same state file, and you have a outage in one cloud, then you won't be able to manage the other cloud platform. So maybe in a production environment, it might be better to separate them out into different state files, but it's just a simple project to show it's working. Um, so if I go to the Azure ones, there's some cool stuff in here. So one thing I do is there's a CIDR subnets function which can split up your can split up a CIDR range into multiple ones. So I split up my Azure CIDR range into two different subnets, and that one means just add one bit to the prefix. So the initial prefix is /24, and it'll go to /25. And same, you get another /25. So it'll do the CIDR math for you. No matter what address space you put in there, it'll figure it out for you. It's pretty handy. Um, there's some cool stuff in here. There's some of these Azure resources reference the AWS resources. Like, let me see. Here we go. The local network gateway that I was showing in the diagram. Um, Here we go. The gateway address, it's AWS VPN connection.vpn.tunnel1 address. And you also got to specify the address space on the other side. So you say local.aws address space. Um, I got my security group, and oh, here I allow here I got my security group rules to allow AWS HTTP and AWS ping. So I just specify the AWS address space for both of them. Um, then I deploy my jump box, and oh, down here is where in the Linux jump box is where I specify the public key that was inputted in to as a variable. So I just open up that file from the variable name and set the public key to that. So you don't have to set it yourself. And oh, here's where the custom data script is for the Azure side. So it runs this template file command on that .sh.tf template file showing that it has the startup script, and it templates it using this object right here, which so it specifies the cloud Azure, and the region is the resource group's location. So just a template file, and then it needs to do base64 encoding to upload it. The AWS side, here's aws.tf. It's pretty similar. Get your VPN connection. Here's where I specify the two pre-shared keys. I forgot to mention that on the Azure side. So here's tunnel1 pre-shared key. I say random string.tunnel1 pre-shared key.result. Same with tunnel2. So that's pretty nifty. Generally, this is pretty similar though to what's on the Azure side. Oh, let me go to the route to the. Here we go. So I have the in your VPC you got to specify a route table. So I have you have the default internet bound route which will route all 0.0.0.0/0 traffic to the internet gateway, which is pretty standard. Send internet traffic out to the internet. And I also have this Azure bound route, and so this one will specify any route going to the destination site of the Azure address space to the VPN gateway. So that's pretty neat. The rest of it's about the same as the Azure side, though. The code is not that different. So this is still running. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut it out, and then once it's done, I'll come back and I'll show the VPN created in the Azure and AWS side, and I'll validate the connection. So I'll be back. All right, I'm back. So it looks like the code finished running. So it said the apply complete for each added, 0 changed, 0 destroyed, and it also outputted the public IP addresses for my two jump boxes, which will come pretty handy. So first I'm going to show you what it looks like on, at least in the AWS and management console and Azure portal with the to show that the VPN connection is working. So let me open up the VPC section of AWS. And then if I go down to the VPN section right here, if I go to site-to-site VPN connections, here's my VPN connection. And here you can see I have, so the state's available, and here's the 2 tunnels. So the tunnels are up. So that looks pretty good on the AWS side. Let me check the Azure side. So I'm going to look for VPN gateway. Let me just find it in my resource group. So I think it made a resource group called VPN. Yeah, I can just check in here. There we go, Virtual Network Gateway. There we go. And let's go to connections. Here's my 2 tunnels. Status unknown. Huh. Maybe it'll take a minute to show up. But here's the 2 tunnels right here. Status unknown. That's strange. Well, I'm gonna come back to this in a minute. I'm gonna go SSH into the VMs and verify that it's working. So in the README and the code, I actually have the commands to SSH into them. So here's the command SSH. Because I output the public IP addresses, I can just put this directly into the command SSH. So this is gonna be SSH into the Azure VM. So let me do that. And there we go, SSH. If you want to connecting, yeah, it's the first time I've connected to the host, so I say yes. There we go. I'm on the Azure side, and let me try do curl to the IP address on the local IP address on the AWS side. So it's 10.0.1.4, 10.0.1.4. There we go. It says hello from AWS region US East 1. And just to make sure this is the Azure side, I'm going to just curl localhost. There you go. Hello from Azure region, East US. And I can also ping the AWS side, 0.1.4. There we go. So ping's working. So that looks good. So I verified the connection from the Azure side to AWS side. Let me exit out of this SSH section and try the other way around. So I want to SSH into the EC2 instance. So let me do that. It's the first time connecting. Do you want to verify? Yes. There we go. There it is. It says 10.0.1.4, which is on the AWS IP address. So let me try connecting over HTTP to the Azure side. So curl 10.0.0.4. There we go. Hello from Azure region East US. And just to verify, let me just try doing localhost to show that I'm on the AWS one. There we go. Hello from AWS region US East 1. And let me also just try pinging the Azure side just to verify that works. There we go. So yeah, that works. The connection was able to work from both sides. Let me just go back to the Azure side real quick just to make sure, check what's up with that status thing. I'm thinking it just takes a minute to show up. There we go. Now it says connected on both of them. So I go to overview. Yeah, connections connected on both tunnels on the Azure side. So there we go. That's pretty much it. That's how to make a simple VPN between Azure and AWS. Again, all the code's in the description. If you want to copy paste parts of it, that's completely fine. Yeah, thanks for watching.